Hello, and a warm welcome to you. It's nice to see familiar names. Glenda, hello. Hi, Lily. Hello, Victoria. If you don't mind, we're going to wait a few minutes for others to join. Hope all is well at your end. Hi, Chris. Yes. Beginning of April. It is already fantastic. It's not winter anymore, not in the Western Hemisphere anyway. So far, ladies coming in. Thank you for joining us. We're still in the waiting section, just to make sure that everybody gets in. And then maybe in the next couple of minutes or so, we can start and talk about this beautiful book. Hello, Maya. Thank you for joining us. Mm-hmm. I don't know where you are. Maybe you are in the United States, but here in Central Europe, the evening is getting longer and longer, which is pleasant, I must say. It's so nice. Well, maybe others can join in. Chris is saying that cannot seem to control my audio or gallery view. I can hear you. I just don't have any controls. Right now you can't, because I think this is a webinar, so it is set up that it's only me who can speak, but maybe at the end, when you would like to comment on the lecture, then I can open your audio channel, and then you can do so. But thank you very much for letting us know. Hello, Diane. Thank you for joining us. Okay, well, I shall get it started. Last month, when you were joining us, this is actually the Great Books course, you all know that, but there will be others who will be listening to the recorded version of this presentation. We discussed all the different aspects of friendship, because the book, Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Inseparables, focuses on friendship. This is what we're going to hear about today. And just like last time, I prepared a presentation, and this is what we're going to see. So let's actually see first what Simone de Beauvoir family was like, and her upbringing, and her probably her 20s, and what she was doing then, and how she came to meeting Zaza. Zaza and her friendship center stage of the book Inseparables. So Simone de Beauvoir was born in 1908 in Paris and was brought up in a very Catholic family, and she had one younger sister. She attended a private all-girls school, so she was surrounded by women, predominantly at the early stages of her life. In 1928, she enrolled to study at the Sorbonne, which was contrary to what her mother wanted. She did not want her daughter to pursue higher education because she was afraid if Beauvoir would lose her faith at school. Beauvoir said later on that prior to being enrolled to the Sorbonne, she was an atheist already. At this stage of her life, she did not define herself as a feminist, and she did not consider herself as an unprivileged woman. At the Sorbonne, studying philosophy, she met Jean-Paul Sartre, who was repeating a year because he failed the previous year's exam, and Beauvoir offered him to be his study partner. Sartre concentrated on existentialist philosophy. Existentialist philosophy's major creed is that you make yourself as you become. It does not define, for example, what is good or bad, but regarding these as situational. What are the consequences of a certain behavior? It is a means and end, whereby means have a major emphasis on. It is not like means justify the end. How you make your decision is the heart of existential philosophy. And Beauvoir explored all that and the existentialist ethics and the situation of women in the world up to her death in 1986. At the age of 21, Simone de Beauvoir became the youngest person to pass an aggregate exam. And apparently only Sartre did better than she did. Beauvoir and Sartre had a very unconventional relationship. Concerning the time, they were companions. They were romantically involved, though they never got married. They were also intellectual partners, studied together, developed each other's ideas, and they are also buried next to each other. There were two people with supreme intelligence. Some people say that if you don't understand Sartre, go and read Beauvoir. She was working within the importance of being in the world, existentialist framework of freedom of choice. All her and his works were jointly edited. She worked in the topics of nature and other interactions with the major issues of the day. She had a brilliant mind. She was able to assimilate detail on a vast scale. She was very erudite. Beauvoir said that the Second World War brought her out of the ostrich's sand. It was the experience of war that instigated Beauvoir's intellectual breakthroughs on the situation of sex and women's liberation. As most men left to fight in the war, she was left surrounded by women, and she observed their lifestyles and qualities of such. During this time, she embarked on a research project centered on the phenomenology of women. She wanted to understand what it is like being a woman. A common stereotype of philosophers and intellectuals is that they remain distant from the real world. Beauvoir herself admits that, early in her career, she conformed to this caricature, but any illusions of grand distance were shattered with the rise of fascism in the 1930s and a Nazi occupation of France. Watching the Nazi and Soviet attempts to build their different utopias, each in their own ways, promising idealized visions of women's role in society, Beauvoir crystallized her theory about the reality of women's existence. She argued it was determined to a great extent by biological facts as well as social and political systems. Her major work, The Second Sex, highlighted the vastly different ways that women were raised compared to men and the different expectations placed on women, many of which seem to transcend the dictates of biology. One is not born a woman, Beauvoir wrote. One becomes one. She sought to bring women into consciousness of their existence as a group defined by man as the other. The behaviors and mores associated with womanhood were not natural, she argued, but constructed against the ideal male type. Beauvoir meant that in existentialism, we are free. We are not determined, and we do not have gender nature. In other words, there are no pre-given scripts such as I act because of a nationality or a gender. She meant that life is what you do with the cards you are dealt. Beauvoir, in A Second Sex, encouraged women to make the essence of their lives, becoming a woman rather than born as one. She almost has an anti-naturalistic stance, saying that there is no inherent nature that decrees that men are like this and women are like that. She was interested in what and how patriarchal society defines as per myth women. Myth can be as determining forces and can constrain women in certain ways, for example, the myth of motherhood as a natural role as all women are destined to fulfill. Beauvoir, in The Second Sex, talks about the micropolitics of gender relations as per how girls and women learn how to become patriarchal accepted persons. They become relative to the masculine universal subject. Beauvoir argues that women have choices, and it is up to women to seize these choices. The Second Sex explores the roles that biology, history, and literature have played in creating and upholding the myth of women. She plotted how this transformation takes place from birth through old age, and she challenged us to imagine what a free woman's life might be like. In doing so, she initiated the second wave of feminism. Have we reached the day Beauvoir envisioned when, she said, it will be possible for woman to love not in her weakness but in strength, not to escape herself but to define herself, not to abase herself but to assert herself. On that day, love will become for her, as for man, a source of life and not of mortal danger. There is one more interesting point I would like to share with you here, which is about the strong possibility of how much Beauvoir's Second Sex was greatly influenced by her friendship with Zaza and the loss of her life. Through the strong emotions she experienced in this loving and tragic friendship, she created her own rules for living and loving. In Beauvoir's autobiography, Memoirs of a Youthful Daughter, she wrote, "Be loved, be admired, be necessary." She clearly loved and admired her dear friend Elisabeth Lacoin, nicknamed Zaza. A defining relationship of Beauvoir's young life was with Zaza. Before Beauvoir fell in love with Sartre, she fell in love first time with Zaza. The Inseparables is about her profound friendship with Zaza, a friendship that had long distressed her not just in her books, but in her dreams too. Inseparable is a title given to Simone and Zaza by their teachers at their school, as well as from letters Beauvoir wrote from childhood on to Zaza, calling her dear inseparable friend. So let me read something from the book itself. My dear Zaza, I firmly believe that my lassitude is equaled only by your own. I received your wonderful letter 15 days ago and still haven't put my mind to replying until now. I'm having such fun here that I simply haven't found the time. I have just come back from a hunt. It was my third time going out, but I have had no luck. My uncle hasn't killed anything the days I have gone with him. Today, he hit a partridge, but it fell into the bush. Are the blackberries at Ganyapan, at Merenyag? We have loads. They cover the hedges, and we gorge ourselves on them. Goodbye, my dear Zaza. Don't make me wait as long for your letter as you have had to wait for mine. I embrace you with all my heart, as well as your brothers and sisters, and especially your godson. Please pay my respect to Madame Lecoin. Maman sends hers as well. You're inseparable. Simone. This book, The Inseparables, is one of several attempts Beauvoir made to tell the story through fiction. This story is not just about friendship, but it is about women's history, the issues of feminism and religion, observing how and in what ways her dear friend was overpowered by her family's rule and a social system. And all this contributed to an early, untimely death at the age of 21, affected Beauvoir's feminist endeavors. According to Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir, adopted daughter of Simone de Beauvoir, the two young girls met at the age of 9 at a Catholic school in Paris. When the next school year began, Zaza didn't turn up with the other girls. Darkness fell on the world. All was gloomy and oppressive until the day when Zaza suddenly appeared, late in the term, bringing with her sunshine, joy, and happiness. Simona fell under the spell of Zaza's lively intellect and many talents. She was completely enthralled by her. They competed to be top of the class and became inseparable. Simone was not unhappy at home with her beloved mother, her father, whom she looked up to, and her little sister, who revered her in turn. Simone experienced her first great love affair. She worshipped Zaza and shuddered at the thought of displeasing her. The friendship that Beauvoir experienced could be likened to Montaigne with La Boétie, scribed in his essays, because he was he and I was I. La Boétie, just like Zaza, faced an early death that both Montaigne and Beauvoir felt as catastrophic event in their lives. Just like Montaigne, Beauvoir attempted to write her friend back to life. This novella demonstrates how difficult it is to write about friendship without much idealization. Simone de Beauvoir once said that, "For a long time, I believed that I had paid for my own freedom with Zaza's death." In Beauvoir's eyes, Zaza was unique and exceptional. Losing her, Beauvoir blamed it on Zaza's rigid family upbringing and tight social duties. Zaza's soul and life were crushed by her family and social system, which Beauvoir viewed as a violation on individual freedom, individual expression, and human rights themselves. These are amongst many other aspects Simone de Beauvoir aimed to address and explore in her novella. Zaza adored her cold mother, who in turn did not support her in any way, and only saw two paths for her daughters: either be in a convent or be married. Not to mention that a husband to be chosen by her mother only, where criteria is based on ideological, religious, social, and financial objectives. One does not marry outside of one's caste, has been and still is in practice in our world today. Zaza was in love a couple of times, but tragically those men were not acceptable by her family. Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir pointed out that Zaza was made to submit because she had internalized a Catholicism which most people practice at their convenience as a formality. Being exceptional, yet again, worked against her. Although she was well aware of the hypocrisy, the lies, and the egotistical moralism of those in her milieu, whose petty, purely self-serving thoughts and actions constantly betrayed the spirit of the gospel, her faith, though shaken, persisted. But she suffered from the internal exile, the inability to understand those closest to her, and from the loneliness, although she was never alone, of existential solitude. The sincerity of her spiritual standards mortified her in the fullest sense of the word and tortured her. She found herself cornered by her own personal contradictions. Because for Zaza, faith was not, as it is for many, a smug exploitation of God, a way of being right, of self-justifying, and fleeing one's responsibilities by the painful questioning of God, who remains silent, obscure, hidden. She was her own executioner, and it tore her apart. Should she obey, submit, stop thinking about herself, stop questioning everything the way her mother insisted she must? Or should she disobey, revolt, lay claim to the talents and gifts that had been bestowed upon her, as her best friend encouraged her to do? Simone de Beauvoir concluded, Zaza died because she tried to be herself, and because those around her believed that this was inherently bad. Her singularity was crushed. Therein lies the crime. Simone de Beauvoir describes meeting Zaza as the blinding revelation by which conventions, routines, and the careful categorization of emotions were swept away by a flood of feeling that had no place in any code. Like all forbidden love, the tacit mutual acknowledgement of these feelings manifested itself in somewhat stiff and formal relationship. There were no kisses, no friendly thumbs on the back. We continued to address one another as vous, and we were reserved in our speech. De Beauvoir dedicated this book to Zaza only, saying the following: If there are tears in my eyes tonight, is it because you are no longer alive or because I am? I should dedicate this story to you, but I know that you no longer exist anywhere. And my writing to you like this is pure literary artifice. In any case, this isn't really your story, only one inspired by us. You were not Andre, nor was I Sylvie, who speaks in my name. A letter from Zaza to Simone speaks volumes of their deep love for one another. I try to find this one. Where is it? I'd like to read it to you. Maybe this will inspire to read the book. My dear Simone, this was written in 1927. Your letter reached me at a time when I had some time to myself to reflect, which brought me much of the lucidity and understanding that I could not find during the first part of our stay here. I felt such joy reading you, feeling that we were very close to one another, whereas your previous letter had made me feel that you were growing distant from me and suddenly forging a different path. In short, please forgive me for having very badly misunderstood. My mistake arose from the fact that in your previous letter, you emphasized your pursuit of truth, your most recent conquest, that is to say, I thought I saw in this achievement, which is only one goal, only one way of giving meaning to your life, a renunciation of everything else, and an abandonment of such a beautiful part of our humanity. I see that this kind of mutilation is not at all what you had in mind, and that you have renounced none of yourself, that I am now convinced is where the true energy lies. And I believe it is necessary to force ourselves to reach a certain point of internal perfection where all our contradictions melt away and we may become ourselves in all our vastness. And that is why I particularly like the way you said, save oneself whole and intact, which is the most beautiful human conception of existence and which isn't so very far off from the Christian idea of seeking salvation when you understand it in its larger meaning. Although you didn't say so, I know that a great feeling of peace has settled within you merely from the way your letter calmed me. There is no feeling in the world where sweet than knowing that there is someone who understands you entirely and upon whose friendship one may count. Absolutely. Come as quickly as you can. The 10th, for instance, is convenient for us, as in any other date for that matter. You will be here at the same time as the Deneuvilles, who will be here from the 8th to the 15th. No doubt your first days here will be very busy, but I believe that you will stay on much longer after they have gone, and that you will enjoy Ganyapan in its calm moments as well as its agitated ones. I suspect when I said amuse oneself in order to forget it all, you sought to reproach me, and I would like to explain myself as I have gone well beyond my thoughts. I know from experience that there are moments when nothing can distract me from my thoughts, and that trying to amuse myself is an ordeal. Recently, at Hobart then, they organized a great excursion with some friends to the Netherlands. I felt such a keen need for solitude, and that moment that amusing myself would have been impossible, and I hacked myself in the foot with an axe, so as to have an excuse not to go. That won 8 days of bed rest and loads of pity from everyone, as well as a few comments about my carelessness and clumsiness. But at least I had a bit of a time alone and the right not to speak to anyone or have to amuse myself. I very much hope I won't have to resort to X again during your visit. On the 11th, we have decided to journey about 25 kilometers from here to see a cattle race. And we will also stop in at an old chateau where some cousins of ours are staying. Do try to be there for it, I beg you. As for your train, I don't know what to tell you. Come via Bordeaux. If this is Montabon, we can pick you up from there, which isn't far from here, to spare your change in trains. Take whichever one you want. I will come at any time of the day or night to pick you up in our motor car. But do come quickly. Farewell, my dear Simone. I am yours with all my heart. My respect to your mother, and tell her how grateful I am for allowing you to come here. It is evident that their story served an inspiration. However, the reader can detect far too many similarities in between the real life experience friendship and the fictional one. The Inseparables, there's a story of two young girls coming of age, trying to find their places in society, dealing with societal and familial expectations, grappling with their own truth, and how to relate to other people around them while trying to understand themselves. This novel is emotionally compelling about a profound, intensive, and tragic friendship. It was written in 1954, but it was not published while de Beauvoir was alive because apparently Sartre didn't like the story itself, maybe because he was jealous of Beauvoir's love for her friend. And also, she may have felt the story was too perplexing and too personal. She explained. Writers often describe painful experiences not because they create literature from just anything at all. It is a sacrilegious way, as is sometimes said, but because from speaking of it is a way of surpassing their grief, their anguish, their sorrow. I chose the edition translated by Lauren Elkin and introduced by Deborah Levy. There is another edition with Margaret Atwood's introduction. Lauren Elkin wrote about the book the following. It is more than good. It is poignant, chilling, and eviscerating. She goes on saying, nowhere else does Beauvoir tell her story with Zaza so fully, imagining with such love, though utterly without nostalgia, the life they shared and vanished world that contained her friend. The Inseparables isn't only about dealing with grief. It is also about celebrating Zaza's life and their friendship, as well as processing survivors' guilt and directing responsibility to those who crushed Zaza's spirit. The amazing storyteller Beauvoir is, she recounts the story of an innocent, intelligent girl who witnesses her friend oppressed by the weight of her family's strict moral codes and social system. Zaza's alter ego in this book is André Gallard and Simone de Beauvoir as Sylvie Lepage. She was the narrator, the storyteller. The two girls meeting at a private Catholic school where Sylvie is bored, feels lonely personally and intellectually, whereas André is clever and religious, turns Sylvie's life around. Sylvie says that nothing so interesting had ever happened to me. It suddenly seemed as if nothing had ever happened to me at all. They were twin rebels, she said. We had zero respect for our teachers' opinions, and our parents' ideas didn't satisfy us either. Sylvie also wrote, what I admired most about her were the little habits she had that I never understood, like when she saw a peach or an orchid, or even if someone just said one of those words to her, she shivered and goose flesh stood out on her arms. It was in those moments that I was most trembling aware of the gift she had received from heaven, which I found so enthralling, her personality. Secretly, I thought to myself that André was one of those prodigies about whom later on books would be written. Sylvie's strong feelings towards André appear at early stages of their friendship. So let's hear Simone de Beauvoir's words. Life without her would be death. Mademoiselle de Villeneuve sat in her chair, and I repeated to myself, without André, I would no longer be alive. My joy turned to anguish. What would become of me, I thought, if she died? I would be sitting here on the stool. The headmistress would enter, and she would say in a serious voice, let us pray, children. Your little classmate, André Gallard, was called home to God last night. Well, it is very simple, I decided. I would slip from my stool and die as well. The thought of it didn't frighten me, as would soon be reunited at the gates of heaven. Sylvie strongly felt that André's love for her was not as deep as Sylvie's towards André. Would André have been sad if we had been prevented from seeing each other? Less than I would have been, to be sure. They called us the Inseparables, and she preferred my company to that of the other girls. But it seemed to me that her love for her mother made her other attachments pale by comparison. Her family was enormously important to her. She spent hours amusing her twin baby sisters, bathing and dressing their chubby, undifferentiated flesh, deciphering their babbling and hesitant mimicry, coddling them and lavishing them with love. Then, too, there was her music. When she sat at the piano or nestled her violin in the crook of her neck, listening reverently to the song that took shape beneath her fingers, I thought I heard her talking to herself, next to the unending dialogue that took place in the secrecy of her heart. Our conversations seemed truly childish. Sometimes she would be accompanied on the piano by Madame Gallard, who played very well herself, and I would feel completely left out. No, our friendship was not as important to Andre as it was to me, but admired her too much to suffer from it. She later reveals, but above all, she didn't see the extent to which I needed to share everything with her. That was what upset me the most. The realization that she was utterly unaware of my feelings for her. When Andre speaks of her daydreams, Sylvie thinks, what would I have daydreamed about? I loved Andre above all else, and she was right next to me. Andre and Sylvie come from two different family backgrounds and upbringing. Sylvie is from a small, stable, not very affluent family, whereas Andre's family is large and wealthy, and her mother is determined that her children should keep such status. Sylvie's aspiration is towards education and self-sufficiency, and fortunate enough that she is not obliged to marry because her father, through a series of bad investments, can no longer provide her with a dowry. Sylvie studies in order to earn her living as a teacher, allowing her the independence she wants. All these are not afforded to Andre. She is demanded to get married or enter a convent. These two girls, with seemingly opposite in character, enjoy each other's company, thus become inseparable. Andre dreams of the future. Sylvie wants to have one with Andre in it. At the tender age of 13, Andre falls in love with Bernard, the neighbor's son of their country house, and she is well aware of the sinfulness of their innocent kisses. They want to get married, but Andre's family does not accept this boy as a suitable husband because they are not part of Andre's family's social circle. So they reach out to the boy's father to terminate the relationship. Sylvie tries without any success to persuade Andre that following her heart is not a sin, that being pure is not imperative for a happy life. So let's see what they say. He fell in love with me, said Andre. She turned to look at me. I can't explain it. It made such a change in my life. I had always thought that no one should love me. Did you really think that? I asked. Yes, but why? She shrugged. I thought I was so ugly, so clumsy and uninteresting. Nobody really cared about me. What about your mother? Sylvie asked. Oh, well, a mother has to love her children. That doesn't count. Mama loved us all, and there were so many of us. There was disgust in her voice. Had she been jealous of her brothers and sisters? Had she suffered from the coldness I felt emanating from Madame Gallard? I had never thought that Andre's love for her mother could be an unhappy one. She pressed her hands against the gleaming wood of the table. Bernard was the only person in the world who loved me for myself, exactly as I was, and because I was myself, she said fiercely. What about me? Sylvie asked. The words had just fallen out of my mouth. I was revolted by how unjust it all was. Andre stared at me in surprise. You? Didn't I value you for who you were? Of course, Andre said in an uncertain voice. The warmth of the alcohol and my indignation made me brave. I wanted to say to Andre the kinds of things you only say in books. You never knew, but from the day I met you, you were everything to me, I said. I had decided that if you died, I would immediately die as well. I spoke in the past tense and tried to make my voice sounded detached. Andre continued to look at me, perplexed. I thought your books and your studies were all that was really important to you, she said. You were more important. I would have given anything to keep you from losing you. She didn't say anything. Did you not suspect it? When you gave me that bag for my birthday, I thought that you felt truly affectionate towards me. It was so much more than that, Sylvie said. She looked moved. How had I failed to make her feel that I loved her? She had appeared so glorious to me that I had assumed she had everything she wanted. I wanted to cry for her and for myself. How odd, André said. We were inseparable for so many years, and yet I realized I didn't really know you. I form opinions of people too quickly, she said with remorse. I didn't want her to blame herself. I didn't really know you either, I said vigorously. I thought you were proud to be as you were. I am with you. I'm not proud, she said. She got up and walked over to the stove. The cake is ready, she said, opening the oven. She blew out the flame and put the cake away in a cupboard. We went up to her room, and while we were undressing, she said, "Will you take communion tomorrow morning?" "No," Sylvie said. "Then let's go to Mass together." "I won't take communion either. I am in a state of sin," she said indifferently. "I still haven't told Mama I disobeyed her. And what's worse, I am not sorry I did." Sylvie is reluctantly invited to spend the holidays with the family, to divert Andre's attention from her lost love, but she is heartbroken. Just like it happened in their real life, Andre carries the weight of her Catholic upbringing and social status. Her faith is solid with Sylvie's losses, her entirely. This creates a tension between the girls and overshadows their friendship. Sylvie is 14 years old when she realized that her relationship with God has changed. So let's hear again from Simone de Beauvoir. One night, sleeping in a damp field, looking up at the moon, I said to myself, "These are sins." And yet I was firmly resolved to continue to eat, read, talk, and dream exactly as I pleased. "I don't believe in God," I said to myself. How could I believe in God and deliberately decide to disobey him? The truth of it stunned me for a moment. I didn't believe in God. Papa didn't believe either, and neither did the writers I admired. Without God, the world, no doubt, was difficult to explain, but God didn't explain very much, or, at any rate, we would have understood very little. I took to this new state of affairs without much difficulty. However, when I returned to Paris, panic took hold of me. We cannot help what we think, and yet Papa had once spoken of shooting the defeatist, and a year earlier, an older student had been, I had heard it whispered, kicked out of the school because she had lost her faith. I was going to have to carefully conceal my disgrace. At night, I woke up sweating in fear that Andre might suspect something. Abbe Dominic, the priest to whom Sylvie bared her soul, scolded her. "I have been told that my little Sylvie is not the same girl she was. It seems she has become distracted, disobedient, and insolent. Instead of being apologetic, Sylvie becomes rebellious." The two girls discussed this topic. "Sylvie, if you don't believe in God, how can you bear to be alive?" "But I love being alive," said Sylvie. "I do too, but that is just it. If I thought that the people I loved die, and that would be the end of them, I would kill myself immediately." "I don't want to kill myself," said Sylvie. It is clear to Sylvie that Andre is conflicted between being an obedient daughter and her own aspirations, and not having been able to choose, led André to her death. André, who was well aware of the difficult circumstances she was in, said, "Must I spend my life fighting against the people I love?" Beauvoir here highlights the feminist dilemma. If the meaning of being a good girl is self-sacrifice, then eventually you must break yourself or break someone else's heart. Sylvie's argument about the Catholic Church regarding women's body, she said the following: "They teach you in catechism to respect your body. So selling your body in marriage must be as bad as selling it on the street." Madame Gallard, André's mother, perspective was non-negotiable. Join a convent or get a husband. Remaining unmarried is not a vocation. André does a lot of domestic labor, cooks and cleans, looks after her many siblings, pleasing her mother all the time, while she has very little time to study herself and hardly ever talks about her feelings. Her mother burdened her with chores that she carried out with the zeal of a penitent, Sylvie noted. She loves literature, but she has no time to read. She also loves playing the piano and the violin, but only do so to entertain her family and not for her own pleasure. At an occasion when Sylvie was staying at the Gallard residence, she heard André playing the violin away from the house. She begged her to continue, but André pleaded not to tell anyone that she played music. Like she felt even such pleasure was not allowed to her until she demands it in a way that scares the whole family. One day she's found in a garden, blood streaming from her little body. She self-injured her foot with an axe, making it look like it was an accident, so that she could stay in bed, be alone for a few weeks. André tells Sylvie, "I told you that I would figure out how to have some time to myself one way or another." The idea of the axe came to me this morning while I was gathering flowers. Hurting herself afforded her a break from her family obligations. André gives in to the familial obligations over and above her own desires. It is clear that her mother is causing her deep psychic wounds, but André does not stand up to her mother. All these are painful for Sylvie to observe, and many times feels powerless to influence her dear friend to change, to find a healthier balance in her life, and not to give in to the family's oppressive demands. Sylvie studies philosophy and André literature at the Sorbonne. Sylvie becomes friends with a young Catholic man in her class, Pascal, with impeccable manners and beautiful angelic face. She says Pascal's very existence reconciled André with human nature, with the Word, with God. He believed in heaven and he loved life. He was joyful and he was irreproachable. So all men were not bad then, nor all virtues false. And paradise could be attained without renouncing life on earth. She introduces Pascal to her friend André, and soon the two start going out. Sylvie is happy that her friends are happy with Pascal. André could finally reconcile duty and happiness. But unfortunately, this was not the case. As André's older sister was married off already, her mother focuses all her attention to find a suitable husband to her younger daughter. André would like to marry Pascal, but it becomes clear that Pascal is as obedient to his father as she is to her mother. On top of all, André's mother is not very keen on their relationship, so it is a dead end for all concerned. André yet again is devastated. Another heart-breaking relationship she cannot take anymore. Soon she gets ill. She has a high fever for many days. Even doctors could not reduce. When I rang the clinic around 10 in the morning, they told me it was over. The doctors still couldn't say why. I went to see Andre in the chapel of the clinic. She was surrounded by candles and flowers and wore one of her stiff cotton nightshirts. Her hair had grown out and fell in straight locks around her yellowed face, which was so thin I had a difficult time recognizing her features. Her hands, with their long pale talons, held a crucifix and looked as fragile as those of an ancient mummy. We buried her in a little cemetery at Bethary, alongside the dust of her ancestors. Madame Gallard sobbed. We have been but instruments in the hands of God, Monsieur Gallard told her. The grave was covered in white flowers. A dark insight occurred to me. Andre had suffocated in all this whiteness. Atop that immaculate abundance, I laid down 3 red roses before leaving for my train. The Inseparables is both a deliberation on the human longing for connection and a novelized expression as to why Beauvoir became an ardent campaigner for female equality and liberation. The Inseparables portrays love and grief. It is also about faith, hypocrisy, and 2 friends struggling with questions of human and divine will. It is a captivating story indeed. For Andre, problem of evil is significant. She feels unlovable and that God is against her. She wants to do her best what God wants from her, but it is unclear what exactly that is. In her understanding, to follow one's own desires meant to her facing family disobedience, which means sin to its core. Sylvie loses her faith, Andre loses herself, and eventually her life. Beauvoir's existential philosophy described that there is no determined identity. She strongly believed that the influence of myth and mystification greatly limits women from meaningful realms of human experience, including friendship. In Michel Montaigne's essay on friendship, he wrote that women are not normally capable of responding to such familiarity and mutual confidence as sustain that holy bond of friendship. When I read Simone de Beauvoir's The Inseparables many times, each time I felt variable emotions such as delight, amusement, humor, curiosity, anger, sadness, and so much more. This novel can be read in many ways. It is like variations to a theme. Friendship and love can be seen in many lights. One may ask, how many Andres and Zazas still exist in the world today? Their lives limited and crushed by organized misogyny. And who tells their story? At the end of this edition, Sylvie Le Bon de Beauvoir shares many photos and letters of Simone and Zaza from different phases of their lives. Beauvoir writes in the final letter she sent to her friend, unaware of her serious and sudden illness. I find happiness on every page. Happiness is bigger and bigger writing. And I am closer to you now than ever before, my dear past, dear present, my dear inseparable friend. Let me finish this presentation with a beautiful poem on Let This Darkness Be a Bell Tower by Rainer Maria Rilke. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower and you the bell. As you ring, What betters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. Well, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. And how do you feel about this book? Have you read this book? If you haven't, I hope that I inspired you to read it because it is an amazing book. It really, really is. Would any of you like to make any comments? If so, you can either put your hand up and I will open your audio channel, or if you wish, you can put any question or comments in the chat box and let us discuss this amazing book if you wish. But there is no pressure whatsoever. I love this book so much. It is beautiful and tragic at the same time, but at least she was afforded an amazing friendship indeed. But anyhow, I've been talking for an hour. I'd like to hear from you. Would any of you would like to share anything at all? It would be wonderful, but if you just want to remain silent. Victoria, hello dear. Okay.
Oh,
I think you can talk now. Hello, dear.
are we all right now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm not a student. I'm the dean
I
of
know.
students, and so perhaps I should not speak first. If there is someone, I have so many things I wanted to say, of course, about the
Please say it,
recent.
Victoria. Please, please, please say
Okay.
it.
Well, I'm probably older than anyone in this class at this point in time. And um, so I have seen things change so much and still need changing in terms of women's equality and opportunities. And of course, in this country at this point in time in the US, we're seeing a backlash to that. And
Mm,
as I said earlier, we have to have hope and faith and activism to try to change that. But let me just say, certainly, as a therapist, women become caught between two worlds, one of tradition and abeyance, as we said, and fear, and the other when they experience their senses and their experiences uh, and have fear, and yet, of course, they experience pleasure if allowed. I, as a therapist, was a co-director of an eating disorders program. And of course, it is alluded to in this book that that there was anorexia involved.
mm,
And um, that is very, very difficult to deal with because it solidifies itself, it turns upon itself. And I guess I wanted to say that, of course, even though we look at their families and sometimes people's spirits are crushed and but at the same time, it can be within themselves. And
mm,
families can be very, very, they don't understand and they really do try to be there for their children. So it's a bit of a mistake if you say, well, it's the religion and it's their families and their spirits are crushed, but it's living in our society. And it's living within um, being being shy or or going so far and people say, oh, you're too exuberant. Everybody is different. And of course, sometimes, as you saw with the acts, uh, and it's usually girls, sometimes boys, sometimes young men, I would see as well. Um, but they can hurt themselves. You know, in this particular culture, people use cigarettes to burn themselves. I mean, I know that's, I'm being perhaps too open at this point, but it is a way to make them feel that they are real and sometimes to get rid of their conflicting thoughts. So it's a very complicated thing. And of course, as I hear this, the whole idea of people like Zaza not having uh, good therapy, because of
Mm,
course, in that sense, and with family therapy, and she might have been saved.
mm.
Yeah.
Oh, so true, Victoria. Thank you very much. When I was reading the book, of course, it is Simone de Beauvoir's interpretation that
Yeah.
she was blaming the family, but it takes two. It takes two. It was actually Zaza as well, who because of her personality, she responded the way she did. So of course one cannot just blame one party at all. Absolutely not. Is much complex than that. And it is also true that some of these is quite a lot of pressure can come from family, but at the same time children can rebel if they want to.
Okay. Yeah.
So it really is interesting that I observed myself when I read this book, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times, that every single time I had like new feelings coming up because it is clearly about that what are those feelings, emotions, and thoughts a story ignites or reignites within me. And it may not be just about my life, but maybe the life of others. And do I find it true or not? Well, clearly this their relationship happened 100 years ago. Many things changed, but maybe not so much changed. As you said, you met so many people who had similar experiences, and I know two of my friends who were self-hurting themselves in their younger age. So it is tough. It really is tough growing up and navigating in life.
Yeah. And one last thing, you know, children and parents and families are can be afraid of the unknown. And
Yeah,
so many times, even today, uh, they are given medications to
yeah.
try to dull their feelings and their thoughts, and it's really unfortunate. You know, sometimes I've had I've suggested that medication being given if somebody's really angry, won't eat it all, um, is very confused, etc., just to get them through. But to keep someone on medication over time
Yeah.
is very wrong.
I know, I totally agree with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Victor. I can see that there are two messages in the chat.
Please.
No, but please stay with us. Lily, thank you so much for this. Your reading, that was your passion for the book shone through. Yes, thank you. Even though I grew up in a hyper-feminist family all the way back, at the least my great-grandmother, but clearly even before that, and I don't relate to the oppression that she refers to. Writing itself is glorious and sensual. Wow, Lily, would you mind to say a few more words about this? I would be so interested to hear that. Do you mind? Because your experience is quite unique. Lily, do you mind? Your you permitted to talk if you switch your. Oh, you don't have a microphone. Oh, I'm so sorry. Never mind. Thank you so much for your message. No worries at all. Thank you, Lily. Wish we heard a little bit more from your experience because it's we all have different experiences. But this book is one of those books. It's only 120 pages, and yet it's so dense and so full of everything. So if you can, please do read it. And no, thank you, Lily, for sharing your messages with us. It's huh, hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for everybody. Unless there are any more comments, then maybe I should just leave it there. Maybe sometimes. Oh, Suzanne, hello. Yes, tell us your.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Suzanne.
Um, so I love the book, and I also found an Audible on Hoopla. It's a rare interview. It was her last interview before she passed. The
Oh.
recording isn't very well, but it was so great to listen to her voice and to have her comment. A lot of that is covered in this book. But I know that I can't imagine growing up in that time, but I do know that because I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school and so forth, though it was just beginning to change, but it was so much pressure that you marry within the church, from your family and so forth. That I know a lot of people, succumb to that. And um, and that was unfortunate. So it was good that I saw that because
Mhm.
I was a little bit more of a rebel. So
Oh, okay.
going to but by the time I really reached my teens, things were beginning to change. They were loosening up on that, but just from family,
Mm.
um, your grandmother and so forth. You just my aunt who when she got divorced, she didn't tell my grandmother for 5 years.
Wow.
And some of my mom's friends who also were divorced, and then if you were divorced, you couldn't receive the sacraments. Even though that changed, um, they still went to church, but they would not receive the sacraments because of the old rule, even though they changed it. I just couldn't understand that. But that's how ingrained it was.
Wow. Wow. And Susan, while, if you don't mind asking these personal questions, while things or times were changing around you, your parents were responsive, so they were not dogmatic in that way, so they were open to the changes.
Um, yeah, they were open to the changes at that point. I even think that they knew that they were even kind of pressured. You know,
Uh,
they were both, my mother was Irish Catholic, my dad was German Catholic, but both of their parents were, you know, old school and still went to uh, still had because they were brought up that way, it was hard for me to understand when they changed the rules, which I was young when they had the um, ecumenical council and they changed things.
mm,
Um, However, I couldn't understand why, like my mother's friends and so forth, still followed the old way.
mm,
Um,
mm,
it was sort of, um, it made them feel less than,
mhm.
and it was unnecessary, and it
Yeah,
was just hard to understand that. But
yeah,
um, I guess when you're ingrained in that,
yeah,
not open to a lot of changes.
yeah, yeah.
Just like when they did change, they changed the um, um, Latin to English, and Latin wasn't allowed except for one church did it, and they were excommunicated.
Ah,
I mean, it was just like those rules were just to me were really ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I could see the suppression that happened in a lot of my relatives that
Mm.
really did, they fell in love with someone else, but he was of the wrong faith, and you know,
And
there's
it's still happening now, right? Absolutely. It's still happening now. I
really.
have absolutely, absolutely. I have a very good friend who is Hindu, and she said to me that she would never marry a Muslim boy. And I was like, why? And then she was looking at me like, yeah, what a stupid question, Gyorgyi, because our faith is different. It's like, what? Faith is love, isn't it? But then again, yeah, I think it's it, a lot of food for thought and discussion. And also while you were talking, so I was thinking about that how much people care about what the neighbor and the outside world think of their own behavior. So many times maybe they wouldn't want to follow a rule, but they do so anyway, because then they would be like, marked by the neighbor or marked by the community or anything like that. And that was very much, I think, prominent in this book as well. And maybe in that regard, not so many things changed. And wanted to ask that, have you actually read the book itself?
Pardon?
Have you read this book, The Inseparables?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
when you were reading it and when you were listening to the to Simone de Beauvoir's that interview with her, how did it actually kind of like take you back to your childhood years?
Well, what it took me back to, and still is, I do have um, a friendship like that. We always sign our letters, "Your forever friend." I
Oh,
met her in third grade, and though I'm still in touch with a lot who I actually went to school with from kindergarten on
oh
up.
my gosh, really?
Yes, yes, we're a very close um, class. Our class in high school is the only class that still meets for reunions every 5 years.
Wow,
And
amazing.
many of us went to grade school together, and most everyone else is from the other two local Catholic schools. So so I went to she came in third grade, and
Mm,
and it was just like she spent many, many years in Venezuela. Her parents moved there to start a business. And even though, and I don't know, we didn't write a lot, but even though during that, and that was it was almost 20 years
mhm,
before she came back to the States. But every time, and she didn't make many visits back to the States, but when she did, it was that feeling that she, we had never been parted, you know.
mm,
Um, it it was always that way, and
wow,
it still is. I mean, I'm out west now, and she's in the Midwest. I
mhm,
moved back to the Midwest. I mean, I moved west when she just came back from Venezuela to the Midwest. So,
mhm.
however, we've remained very, very close.
Oh, it's treasure it, treasure it. Yeah, we talked about it last time, and as well about friends and friendship, and Victoria said some beautiful words as well about that. And Suzanne, fortunate you are to have friends like that. That's really is amazing, outstanding, and beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
participating.
And I love your voice. Just
Oh, thank you. Um, I, yeah, I love great books, and I don't do readouts so often, but I get into it, and sometimes I kind of like lose the outside world. You do feel passionate about
well,
this.
and I thought of Jim too with the passing of his dear friend
Yeah, Jim Hickman. Yeah.
with this book.
Yeah, well, the last month when I gave a presentation, I dedicated to Jim Hickman, and it was all about friendship and what friends are about. And
And I
yes.
know I missed that.
Oh, well, it is on our YouTube channel, so in case you would like to, because we were looking at what Aristotle and the Irish and others said about friendship, and I did bring in Montaigne. He's another French philosopher of mine that I adore, and he had a similar friend like Simone de Beauvoir, who lost at a very young age, and they both clearly idolized their friends. The question always remains that what would have been like their friendship now if they didn't die, but that remains a theory. We don't know, but that's not the point anyway. But to experience such deep love with a friend or with a spouse, it's just beautiful. Only humans can feel it. Maybe animals too, maybe plants too. I don't know. I don't understand that language, unfortunately. Yeah, and I can see that I think Lily
Thank you
said,
very much.
thank you, Suzanne. I really, really appreciate you participated. Chris, my colleague. Ah, wow, Chris, thank you. Would you like to say something about this or not? But that's already a message. I'm sure it wasn't easy to experience. I'm so sorry that it happened to you. Hmm. Thank you, really. Well, thank you so much for this journey with me, for Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Inseparables, and keep loving and stay safe and well. And we will change this world to a better one for sure together. Thank you so much, and see you in a month's time. See you in a month's time. All the very best to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.